Ferrari has officially drawn a line in the sand, and this is where the 2026 story really begins. What you're looking at right now is not a normal development cycle or a cautious long-term plan. Ferrari made one of the most extreme decisions we've seen in modern Formula One by completely stopping development on their current car and redirecting everything toward a single objective known internally as Project 678. Not slowing down, not prioritizing, but fully stopping. By late April, the SF-25 was effectively abandoned, and by mid-June, aerodynamic updates were completely frozen. Every engineer, every wind tunnel hour, every simulation run was pointed at 2026. That tells you just how high the stakes are inside Maranello right now. Fred Vasseur has been unusually honest about what this choice meant internally. Imagine telling hundreds of people who are racing every weekend that the car they're working on no longer matters. That kind of message creates pressure you can't measure on a stopwatch. Vasseur admitted he underestimated the psychological impact, but he also made it clear why Ferrari felt boxed into this corner. Under the 2026 regulations, falling behind early doesn't mean a slow start. It means years of recovery. Ferrari decided that protecting the future mattered more than saving face in the present. And that alone shows how desperate and ambitious this project really is. What makes this even more striking is that this wasn't just a management call. Lewis Hamilton didn't merely agree with the decision, he actively pushed for it. He saw the same risk Ferrari did, and he believed that splitting focus would be worse than sacrificing a season outright. That kind of alignment between a team principal and a seven-time world champion is rare, and it immediately changes how seriously you have to take this project. Ferrari isn't hedging. They're betting everything on the idea that 2026 will reset the competitive order, and that preparation time is more valuable than short-term results. Now here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think stopping development entirely is a smart long-term move? Or is Ferrari gambling too much on a future that might not break their way? Let me know in the comments, and if you're enjoying this kind of deep, honest F1 breakdown, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're pushing toward 2,000 subscribers, and your support genuinely helps the channel grow. In the next part, things get even more interesting, because this gamble wasn't just driven by Ferrari's leadership. It was shaped directly by Lewis Hamilton himself, and the level of influence he had behind closed doors might surprise you. What really separates this Ferrari project from anything we've seen before is how deeply Lewis Hamilton stepped into the process. This wasn't a driver offering casual feedback or making polite suggestions during debriefs. Hamilton immersed himself in Ferrari's structure, spending weeks inside the factory, holding meetings he personally called, and speaking directly with the very top of the organization. He wasn't just talking to engineers. He was sitting down with the chairman, the CEO, and Fred Vasseur, pushing Ferrari to confront weaknesses that had existed for years. Multiple detailed documents went from Hamilton to Ferrari leadership, and that alone tells you how serious this became. He outlined where the current car concept was falling short, questioned how the team was organized internally, and proposed changes designed to prevent Ferrari from falling behind under the new rules. This level of involvement almost never happens in Formula One, especially from a driver who had just joined the team. Hamilton was very open about it, saying he pushed for this because Ferrari simply could not afford to arrive late to 2026. From his point of view, being conservative would have been the real risk. At the same time, Ferrari began reshaping its technical leadership around a very different philosophy. Loic Serra arrived from Mercedes as technical director for chassis, reporting directly to Vasseur, and his approach centered on treating the car as one fully integrated system rather than a collection of optimized parts. Tire performance became the core reference point, not an afterthought. Around this, Ferrari tightened its management structure, shifting from a more open, horizontal model to a restricted, top-down hierarchy. Information flow was limited, access was controlled, and decisions were centralized. Whether that speeds Ferrari up or creates new bottlenecks remains an open question. This is where Ferrari's gamble starts to feel less like a technical bet and more like a cultural one. They didn't just redesign a car. They redefined how decisions are made, who gets to influence them, and how much trust is placed in integration over individual brilliance. That kind of shift can take years to pay off, or it can collapse under its own weight if the results don't arrive quickly enough. So let me ask you this. Do you think Hamilton's influence gives Ferrari a real advantage, or does it risk creating too many voices at the top? Drop your take in the comments, and if you like these behind-the-scenes stories that most headlines skip, hit the like button and subscribe to help us reach 2,000 subscribers. In the next chapter, we're going to separate what Ferrari has actually confirmed from the rumors that have taken over the internet, because not everything being reported deserves the same level of trust. This is the point where things start getting messy, because the internet has been flooded with claims about Ferrari's 2026 car, and only some of them are actually grounded in fact. If you want to understand what Ferrari is really doing, you have to separate what's been physically verified from what's still pure speculation. One confirmed change is the steering wheel redesign that appeared during late-season running. And this is not a cosmetic tweak. Under the 2026 regulations, energy management becomes a constant manual task, and drivers will be activating low-drag modes on nearly every straight. Ferrari reduced the number of rotary switches, shrank the wheel itself, and opened up visibility, all to reduce cognitive overload and speed up decision-making at high speed. Another confirmed element is the suspension layout. Ferrari is returning to push-rod suspension at both the front and rear, something they haven't used in more than a decade. The previous pull-rod setup created persistent problems, and this switch alone signals a willingness to abandon recent philosophy in favor of something more stable under the new rules. Beyond that, though, certainty starts to disappear. Claims about controlled deformation suspension concepts have spread rapidly, but they trace back to a single source and haven't been supported by major technical journalists. When outlets with strong technical credibility stay silent, that usually means the evidence simply isn't there. The most controversial rumor by far involves Ferrari's 2026 power unit and the idea of steel alloy engine cylinders. On paper, the logic sounds convincing. Steel can tolerate higher temperatures and pressures, which could matter with sustainable fuels and higher electrical integration. The problem is that Ferrari's power unit director was asked directly about this and chose not to confirm anything. That non-answer matters. When reports contradict each other and official sources stay silent, anyone claiming certainty is guessing. Ferrari hasn't said yes, and they haven't said no, which keeps the real answer locked behind closed doors. What you're really seeing here is how misinformation thrives in modern Formula One. Fans want breakthroughs, leaks get amplified, and speculation turns into assumed fact overnight. Ferrari's silence doesn't mean revolution. It simply means protection. And right now, the only things you can safely trust are the changes that have actually been seen or officially acknowledged. So here's the question for you. Do you think Ferrari is hiding something genuinely revolutionary, or is this mostly hype fueled by rumor culture? Let me know what you believe in the comments, and if you want clean separation between fact and fiction as we get closer to 2026, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on. In the next chapter, we'll look at why the 2026 rules change driving itself, and why even Ferrari's own drivers aren't fully convinced yet. To understand why Ferrari's choices matter so much, you have to understand what the 2026 regulations actually demand from these cars, and from the drivers sitting inside them. This is the biggest technical reset Formula One has seen since the hybrid era began, and it changes how power is produced, how it's deployed, and how races are driven lap by lap. Right now, most of a car's performance still comes from the internal combustion engine. In 2026, that balance flips almost completely, with roughly half of the power coming from electrical systems. The MGU-K becomes dramatically more powerful, while the MGU-H disappears entirely, meaning all energy recovery comes from braking and throttle lift. That single change reshapes everything. Energy recovery per lap more than doubles. Sustainable fuel becomes mandatory, and even though minimum car weight drops, battery weight increases. Drivers are no longer just managing tires and pace. They're managing energy like a resource that can run out in seconds if used incorrectly. On high-demand circuits, full electrical deployment can fade almost instantly, forcing drivers to think strategically on every straight. This isn't automated anymore. It's a skill, and it's one that can decide races. Active aerodynamics push that challenge even further. DRS is gone, replaced by fully active front and rear wing elements that any driver can deploy on long straights. Proximity to another car no longer matters, which fundamentally changes overtaking dynamics. Drag reduction can be massive, but it comes at the cost of downforce, and choosing when to activate it becomes a constant judgment call. Ferrari's own drivers have already hinted that this doesn't automatically make racing better. The first simulator feedback suggested the car is demanding, mentally heavy, and not especially enjoyable yet, even if it's still early in development. This is where Ferrari's steering wheel redesign suddenly makes perfect sense. Drivers will have more to think about than ever before, and reducing complexity becomes performance. It also explains why Ferrari tested an enormous number of front-wing concepts, and why tire behavior sits at the center of the entire project. Under these rules, the fastest car isn't just the one with the most power. It's the one that lets the driver manage all of this without being overwhelmed. So let me ask you this. Do you think these changes will create smarter, more skill-based racing? Or will they overcomplicate Formula One and take something away from the spectacle? Share your opinion in the comments, and if you're enjoying these deep dives into what 2026 really means, hit like and subscribe to help us reach 2,000 subscribers. In the final part, we'll put Ferrari's gamble up against Mercedes and Red Bull, and ask the hardest question of all: who is actually ready for the next era? When you step back and look at the full 2026 picture, Ferrari's gamble only makes sense in context of what their rivals are doing, because this regulation reset isn't happening in isolation. Mercedes enters the new era with the strongest hybrid pedigree on the grid, and that history matters. They've dominated most of the hybrid era, and while nobody inside Mercedes is claiming certainty, there's a quiet confidence in how prepared they are. Their technical leadership believes chassis, aerodynamics, and tire behavior will ultimately matter more than raw power, which aligns closely with the direction Ferrari claims to be taking. The difference is that Mercedes has been building toward this reset for years, without sacrificing entire seasons along the way. Red Bull, on the other hand, represents the great unknown. For the first time, they're producing their own power unit, and no matter how strong the brand or the talent pool, that's an enormous challenge. Even people inside Red Bull have been careful with expectations, acknowledging that anyone who feels convinced is usually about to be disappointed. They do have one potential advantage in having their engine and chassis operations on the same campus, which could speed up iteration, but losing their legendary aerodynamic leadership at the same time only compounds the risk. For Red Bull, 2026 is as much a learning exercise as it is a title attempt. Ferrari sits somewhere between those two extremes. Their testing plan reflects that reality, with an early phase focused almost entirely on reliability before performance even becomes the priority. They're not expecting the competitive order to be clear immediately, and that's important. Ferrari believes the season could unfold more like past regulation resets, where early leaders don't necessarily stay on top. That belief might be strategic clarity, or it might be optimism born from necessity. The truth is, sacrificing a season only works if your development process is faster than everyone else's once the racing begins. So has Ferrari really revealed something that changes everything? The honest answer is more complicated than any headline suggests. The confirmed details are logical and sensible, but not revolutionary on their own. The rumors remain unproven. The real story isn't about a single component or a secret material. It's about process. Ferrari bet everything on cultural change, on integration, on energy management, and on the belief that building the right system matters more than building one brilliant car. Championship teams aren't created by one-off breakthroughs. They're built by structures that improve continuously.